I believe, this decade could be the decade for VR. First, we had the internet, then the smartphones, and now VR could be the way to, humans communicate.
You're listening to Art Heroes Podcast, the show to help you thrive as a digital artist. Tune in to learn how to transform your passion into a career. Get inspired by other kick-ass 2D and 3D artists, and find out what it takes to be an art hero.
Welcome to episode 7 of Art Heroes Podcast. I'm your host, Maria JD, and today the whole conversation will go about virtual reality, guys. And it's very exciting. So today's guest is Dan Franke, who's a freelance VR artist from Germany. Dan works so much with Quill, and he's so also passionate about it that I'm almost jealous. Dan will talk a lot about opportunities behind VR, what it takes to become VR artist, and all other things VR related. Let's dive right into it. All right, we're on air, and today we're having Dan Franke. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Dan is the very, very first one on Art Heroes Podcast talking about VR. Dan is a freelance VR artist from Stuttgart, Germany. Is that where you are at now, Dan?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I'm in Stuttgart. It's it's not that late here, so I'm guessing it's kind of early for you, or is it?
Well, we're slightly different time zones, let's say. Yes.
It's also an issue, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. So today, the whole conversation will go around virtual reality, around Quill as one of the, let's call it, platforms, right? And about Dan. So, but I'm going to start from the most exciting part. Dan, what's your story?
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's exciting. Well, starting from the early beginnings, just from the start. I wasn't really an artist right away. I was always interested in like technologies and actually physics. When I was 8 or 9, I wanted to become an astrophysicist. and then as soon as I had physics in class in school, it kind of became boring. And so I started drawing, and I also did some like theater in school, and I once tried to write a book, which kind of failed miserably. But all in all, together combined, that basically brought me to my interest in film and animation. And so coming to the end of my high school, I had an assignment where I had to write a big thing about like German class. And I thought, well, actually my grandma had the idea that I take a poem and make a movie out of it. Because I realized, I looked at the internet and I saw, hey, you could basically do a short film, an animated film by yourself, which was pretty naive. So I had to learn everything, and that's basically how I tried to make my first little short film. And
So how old were you?
I was 18, just at the end of my high school, and then I realized that's it. I wanna do that, and I started studying for a year, like basic studies in animation, and tried everything with stop motion, everything like that. And from there, I got to know ZBrush. So I actually became a sculptor. I guess many of your viewers. I fell in love with that, and then started studying here in Stuttgart, in Ludwigsburg, at the Animation Institute, which is a really renowned school. So I was very lucky to get accepted. And I started as a 3D sculptor, but more and more I became interested in storytelling and directing and animating. So that kind of grew, that interest, when I was a director at Studio Soy in my gap year, and I co-directed a couple of episodes for a children's TV series, which was awesome, like the best thing I could have even dreamed of while studying. And then coming back to the studies and into my diploma year, I realized, what do I really want to do after studying? How do I call myself a director, or how can I go out of the university and being a director by myself and not having a big team and big budget and everything. And right at that moment, Goro Fujita came to our school, well-known art director who had started working with Quill and is the main developer, the god of Quill. And he came to us, and I had followed his work for years, and I was super excited. We had a 2-day workshop, and after the workshop, like a week after the workshop, I made a 2.5-minute short film with Quill in 2 days, and that was the breakthrough for me. I realized that's it. I will never ever touch Maya again or ZBrush or anything. I can do a film by myself in a couple of days, and yeah, that's been the story how I discovered Quill. And since like 2 years now, 1.5 years, I have only used Quill, and yeah, that's kind of the story.
Wow, that's the level of productivity we're talking. 2.5 minutes in 2 days. That's over a minute of footage
without
in a day.
without even knowing what kind of a story I wanted to tell. So with Quill, you can just paint a character in 3D, and then animate him, and then like walk around with the camera like on a set and try different things, and later in the edit basically come up with a story. It was just a robot driving around on Mars, and I then put in a voiceover telling a little story that he's just depressed with his work on Mars, and that became a cool little thing. And because the community is very small still, we have like a Facebook group called Virtual Animation, where we have like 15,000 members, which is
What's it called again?
Virtual Animation and virtual
We'll put
painting.
the link then in the show notes. Is it public?
I can of course. Yeah, you would have to get accepted, but it's pretty cool to just, if you're interested, look into that group. There's also virtual painting just for static things, and yeah, I uploaded it there, and people liked it. And because the community is very small still, you get visible very easy. I realized that suddenly with more and more like daily Quill illustrations, as they are called, you just are visible, and you can be a very active member in the community just in a couple of weeks and months. So and also like sharing the knowledge is just a cool thing to do. Just after a couple of months, I was a Quill artist, and yeah, that's why I never looked back.
Wow. I guess that actually answers many of my questions that I had prepared, but it doesn't answer one. Do you think becoming a Quill artist, or like becoming a Quill artist, would be possible for you, and is possible for someone who doesn't have the art background? Because you were into ZBrush before, and you're I don't want to say like professional artist, because I don't know if you actually made money with the actual ZBrush before, but in any case, you are an artist. Bottom line.
I think, and I know that you can learn Quill within 1 day without having any art background. Because I am now actually teaching together with Goro around Europe. So whenever there's a workshop coming up in Europe, for example, in March, the IMAC masterclasses are coming up in Paris, and I will be teaching there together with Goro, and we will have a 1-day workshop for like 15 people, 20 people. Of course, in that kind of masterclass, there are people who have the background and they know art, and they kind of know the basics. But I also have taught people that don't know anything about art and haven't animated anything or drawn anything like properly, and they just get to know Quill, and suddenly, because it's so intuitive, you suddenly can draw, because it's not like with your mouse on the keyboard, or like some like Wacom tablets that you have to get used to.
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely a long learning curve.
Yeah, it's just using your hands. You don't really need that much shortcuts or anything. You just use your hands, and you kind of stand in a virtual environment, and you paint a character right next to you. So also the way you think about your characters and the world you're painting around you just changes completely, because you're standing inside of it, not just as a screen right in front of you.
Interesting. I love that. I didn't know that it would be possible for someone to learn that quickly. Although I can truly believe that because I tried.
Yeah, have you tried? Have you tried?
Yes, I have.
So what
I have a VR set at home, and it was
Uh-huh.
actually, the whole purchase was inspired by Quill.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you, I think it's the best way to learn Quill is by having the experience of kind of a workshop somewhere. So having an artist who knows Quill with you and looking over your shoulder, helping you with the basic shortcuts and everything, it really helps. Other than sitting at home and kind of trying to figure it out by yourself. So that could be hard, but also there are a lot of or the first YouTube channels coming up that feature some really good tutorials. Goro Fujita's channel has the basic tutorials, and also a friend of mine started the Brush Academy, where you really get to know the basics and you can start with Quill. And also I am kind of starting my own little YouTube channel. I posted a project that I've been working on, a personal project, where I recreated a scene from Spider-Verse.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually started working on that just between professional work, like on the evenings, and I started in October or something. And as I was finishing it, I thought, hey, why not posting it on January the 1st this year? Because I truly believe that this year, and especially this decade, will be the breakout year for Quill and VR in general. So, and I kind of want to play my part in making that happen. And so to start off the year, I posted that scene, 40 seconds, 50 seconds of that iconic jump, that leap of faith scene from Spider-Verse. And yeah, that was my way of showing the capabilities of Quill, what is possible.
The scene is pretty impressive. Again, like, the link will be in the show notes for people who are listening to us on audio, and if you're on YouTube, we'll probably just play it now in the background. I absolutely love how you played with the character and the height, and yeah, I can only imagine how it looks like in VR.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Just standing right next to Miles Morales, Spider-Man himself, like looking down the abyss. So it's pretty cool and very immersive. And that whole project took 2 weeks from start to finish.
2 weeks, seriously?
Yeah. Just painting the character in one day, and all the animation shots took less than a day. So it's still mind blowing for me. While working on it, I'm thinking, what the hell did I just do?
Wow!
And that's why I sat down and made a making of, explaining the whole process and some of the techniques.
Nice. So the making of is available on your channel then?
Yes, it's all.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's also
then
on my channel.
We'll cross link to that as well.
And because people obviously thought, hey, it's kind of faked, and there must be some kind of like PNG textures just in the project, but no, it was all painted within Quill and animated in Quill. So yeah, I wanted to show that and share some of my tricks. Yeah.
Interesting. So when did you actually finish working on this project? That was last year.
I actually finished in the last week of December. I guess on the 30th or something.
Okay.
I really wanted to finish that and post it on the 1st. And yeah, it's been tough to just work on that between other projects, but still, I think I was very surprised how many people recognized and how many people saw that. Yeah, actually, even the whole Spider-Verse team themselves, they and I got some emails telling me they are fascinated by that, and the directors saw that. I also had the chance a couple of months ago to speak to one of the directors, Peter Ramsey, and I showed it to him. And even the producer saw it and shared it, and it's mind-blowing.
This is so fascinating. I think this is one of the benefits of being an early adopter of a new and emerging technology, which VR and Quill totally are.
Yeah, yeah.
You definitely can't get that if you just recreate the same characters in, I don't know, like ZBrush or
But obviously,
nowadays.
I have to thank the whole Spider-Verse team. Just I because I kind of copied their work. It's still a little cheating. I animated the same way. I studied their animation and their work. So obviously, it would take me a lot longer to come up with that in the first place. But still, I think even that project Spider-Verse as a symbol of change and that the revolutionary way that that film kind of changed the animation industry. And I think that's why I was also choosing that project as a symbol of change for the animation industry that could come with Quill. So yeah,
Right.
and
Interesting.
I was also fascinated by how many people saw that and said, "Wow, I never heard of Quill. I wasn't aware that that is possible." So that made me really happy because that was
Well, that's a really smooth transition now, because I just wanted to take you by the hand and take a step back and accompany those people who have never heard of Quill before, to maybe explain a little bit about what are the overall possibilities of the tool, and why is it different, and how is it different from any similar ones, if there are any similar ones. I'm not aware, so to me it will be also very interesting to know. It's like favorite question. Talk to me about your competitors.
Yes, there are a couple of similar ones. Talking about VR art creation tools in general, there are, for example, also 3D sculpting tools, like VR sculpting tools, like Oculus Medium, where you can, again, like very intuitively sculpt a creature within minutes, and export that and use it in a usual workflow. And other sculpting tools like Masterpiece Creator and Masterpiece Motion, where you can even rig in VR. And in terms of VR painting tools, which would be Quill, there are others like Tilt Brush, which is developed by Google, which was the first VR painting tool that I actually used a couple of years back. But there, I believe, there is no native way of animating. So there is another tool called AnimVR, which is where you are actually able to animate, which is very similar to Quill, but Quill still has a lot of other techniques and like ways of working that are, at least in my opinion, a little bit better. And obviously, because I got to know Goro, I just started using Quill, and it stuck with me. And yeah.
So basically, in one sentence, Quill is a one-stop shop for VR creation in the sense of VR painting plus animation plus texturing.
No, the way Quill works is you paint 3D strokes that are just based on NURBS curves.
Right.
And with that, with a couple of different brush strokes, like cube brush and just a round brush, you create characters. You actually paint them as you would. It's basically Photoshop in VR. But then you have a character that kind of stands next to you. And what you can then do is puppeteer that character. You have brushes where you can select and move, like, let's say, an arm, and you can just animate it in real time. And I explained some of that in the making of Spider-Verse, where I kind of motion capture myself in VR by just taking the controller to my headset, making a head movement, and by grabbing the head of the character, I basically motion capture myself in real time, which is pretty awesome to do. And just, again, as a non-animator, people just suddenly can animate because it's just the hand movement,
I think it's a really cool explanation, like makes everything perfectly clear. Yeah. So, and then my next question would be, what are like the opportunities currently for artists that work with Quill? It is a small community. Does it also mean limited opportunities. It's obviously growing, but what is it now? What is it now like? Is it only hobbyists, or is it already adopted by anyone who's, working in the industry, meaning companies and the like?
I would even say it's there are not limited opportunities, but the contrary. We are so small that many people just recognize what we can do with Quill, and that's why there are so many offers and opportunities that we couldn't even, all work on that. Like there's so much stuff going on right now, and I can talk for myself. I founded a studio with a couple of other guys called Studio Syro, Syro. We were just artists from the virtual animation group, and we found each other and just worked on one project called Far Away, the music video for Slushy. Again, we did a 7-minute music video in 1.5 months, and we realized that's the perfect workflow. It's a pipeline that we can develop. And then we started searching for projects. And we have some guys from the music industry who want to work with us. And just there are a lot of offers that we're working for. But also because Quill is funded and developed by Facebook, they are pushing to create more content with it, obviously. And
how interesting. That is a really strong point.
Yeah, so which is an app in the Oculus Quest, in the portable Oculus headset, where you can visit Quill paintings and Quill animations, and actually experience VR stories within that app, and start doing your little Quill illustrations here and there, and start getting active in the community. People will recognize that, and you could then potentially just ask Goro or tell him, hey, I have a cool idea that we could where we could do a big project together with, or just find other guys who are on your who just love using Quill, or even just using Quill as a little part of a production pipeline and doing more crazy things with it. So I'm always also working with a couple of other guys on tools where we can utilize Quill on other in other ways of putting it into a pipeline. For example, virtual production, like working on a set, like on a real life set with motion capturing and stuff like that, but having Quill assets. Just so there's so many ways you could utilize that tool. And I know that a lot of big studios are starting to test it out in their workflows.
I know that with the bigger the studio, the longer it takes to do any changes to the pipelines, and it's just the norm, the way it works in the world. The more decision makers you have. So I guess it will still take, I don't know how many years, but it will probably take some years until it's used at the level of any current tool. I mean, it's good to know that it's already very practical for smaller guys, and Facebook is not a smaller guy.
No, yeah, they know what they're doing, and obviously they are pushing hard to get VR into the mainstream. And I believe, this decade could be the decade for VR. First we had the internet, then the smartphones, and now VR could be the way to humans communicate. But I would say I actually am pretty much independent from if VR gets mainstream, if it has success, because it's just my production tool. I use it for work. So yeah.
Right. And so in general, how do you see the usage of VR in general? Because if we're putting it on the same line as internet and smartphones and then VR, then it means that it's more immersive. It's a more immersive technology than just entertainment. Then what else except the current utilization do you see to it?
Yeah, I mean, currently it's a gaming platform, and for me, it's my working platform, but I see the biggest potential, and I think also Facebook wants to tap into that potential of social VR. So kind of like Facebook in VR, or just social communities that form where you can just meet people in VR, or your family in VR. And in a couple of years, it might be possible to have a photorealistic avatar or character, like yourself, kind of 3D scanned or something like that, and being able to meet anyone in the world in a virtual environment is just, and having like non-verbal communication with each other, not just on a screen, is so more immersive and intimate. And that's why I think, give it a little time, but I think it will grow and grow, and might be the way we communicate in the future, and also work in the future.
That is very interesting, because with the whole trend of remote work and the distributed teams and location independence, I definitely see it happening at some point.
Yeah.
Like the way video conferencing spread literally in no time.
Mm-hmm.
This could also happen to VR, although it definitely takes some time for people to acquire devices. I don't know how many VR devices there are currently in the world, but I don't know the ratio. Probably you know better.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that I think last year, like 2019, half of the devices sold, I just read it, I think today, were the Oculus Quest, which is the portable Oculus headset, which means you don't need a powerful PC anymore, which obviously is sometimes, the gap, or the thing that many people don't have, that prevents them from using VR. But with the Quest, you can now just put it on and start playing games. You can't use Quill yet, only with the link cable, where you can then plug it into the PC again. But it even has a better resolution than my headset, and it's a lot easier to use, and that's why so many people bought it. And also the headset from HTC, which is double the price, they are all sold out until February or something like that. Like the Christmas market jumped on that, and now all the headsets are sold out. I'm still waiting for my Quest.
Wow.
and
it's a quest to get a Quest, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely, you realize, or you kind of recognize, that people start getting interested in VR with more and more games and programs coming out. It's more and more fun to actually use it, with more content.
Yeah, love that. So, do you think for artists that are interested potentially in VR, there is a certain pathway of like how to get more involved? So, of course, point A, you need to have a VR headset.
That would be good.
That could be good.
Would be an advantage, yeah.
Quest to get a Quest, but you don't need a Quest necessarily, right? So,
Yeah.
And then step 2, like, where can you learn Quill if you don't want to do it by yourself? Or is it like just the easiest way to go is just to do it by yourself? What would you recommend for those who just want to give it a try?
Yeah, so I would say, again, the best way to learn it would be at a one-day workshop somewhere near you, to kind of overcome those first boundaries that you just, if you're not comfortable with VR, there are some steps you have to take for the first hours of learning Quill and VR in general. But if you are interested just by yourself, even if you have a headset already, maybe, then there are some tutorials online, not that many, but on YouTube you can find some very good channels. and some just learn the basics and get used to kind of the few shortcuts you have to learn, just some muscle memory. But it gets better every day. Yeah, again, after a week, I was making films. So
Wow.
and for the sculptors, there is, as I said, Oculus Medium, for example, where you can just sculpt, and it's pretty much the same as ZBrush, I would say, just in VR. So yeah, I think it's very easy to jump in that. When I was using Medium for the first time, without having any knowledge of any shortcut or how to use anything, just with my kind of Quill experience, I had sculpted a character within 10 minutes or so. Just just jumping into the
Wow.
program without knowing anything.
Well, you're
So that's
inspiring me. I'll open it again. That's fine.
yeah, please do.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Promise. Promise.
All right, all right.
So, like and the next one that I really wanted to say to ask is about the tips. So, what goes after you know how the system works as an
Mhm,
artist? Because you mentioned several times something like daily illustration
mhm.
and the group, and obviously being active. So maybe you can summarize all of this in, I don't know, like 2 or 3 tips for like new artists that are new to Quill, something to help people gain visibility and keep learning and get involved more in the community, because obviously it's pretty lonely out there if you're alone.
Mhm.
So yeah, what would be like to do steps?
Yeah, the easiest thing is just start posting your stuff, even if it's just your first time using Quill. Even your first time using Quill always looks pretty cool already, because in one day you could, paint a character and animate it, and yeah, post it in the virtual animation group. You get a lot of help there. If you have questions, we are very very friendly. We don't bite, and we are very happy to share our knowledge, and happy for everybody who joins our little family. So start posting there, and you start getting visibility very very easy. If you do one really cool project, you're up there and people know you suddenly, in this totally new industry. And what I also think could be cool to try is try using Quill in just in different ways. Maybe painting and animating something in Quill and exporting it into Maya, which you can, and then render it in a pretty cool, maybe abstract style. Things like that are always things where you could do like pioneer work. You can come up with new ideas of utilizing that tool, and making it visible to other people who don't really want to animate, maybe, or just, let's say, architectural visualization, something like that, that you want to do. Use Quill the way you want to use it, and that's also something that I'm always talking about. That yes, Quill and maybe other VR art creation tools are still kind of limited because they are just so new. Quill is kind of in its beta stage,
Yeah.
um, so even though it's limited, this, at least for me, makes me think of new ways of using Quill, and just coming up with new ways of just painting that kind of like object, and just with a new kind of hand movement, just simple ways of creating something. And yeah, it makes you think creatively, and
I
that's
absolutely
what I
love
really
that. Yeah, and I 100% agree that any tool limitations just provides more source for
mm,
your creativity,
mhm.
because in the world of endless possibilities, we can do anything and everything. But
Yeah.
when you are restricted to your path, like at least in like small things, you are forced to use your imagination and just kind of go
Mm,
around things. So that's when
yeah.
it kind of it unlocks.
Yeah, yeah, truly. It's Quill and VR is unlocking my yeah, creativity, and just the thought of being able to do pioneer work in this day and age, where everything is already there, and it's just crazy. And also in a community and an industry that is growing right now at a rapid pace, and which might be the way of art creation in a couple of years. So yeah, that's pretty exciting, and yeah, I want to play my part in that.
So do you see like full on movies in Quill happening in the future?
Well, we'll see. I know that VR is already used in big production. The Lion King was shot in VR, or at least the pre-production. So the director and cameraman, they were just in VR shooting their film, and then they said, okay, let's put that stone over there and that over there, and it's just possible in real time, as if you're working on a real set. You don't have to go to Africa anymore. You just have it on your desk, in the virtual space. So that's pretty exciting. And also, I think it's always a question of money. I think Hollywood will realize that working that way, having one Quill artist in a big studio would save you so much money, which is why starting right now as a Quill artist could be a really good potential to be a lead artist in the biggest company in a year or two. So that's really exciting, and it will come. Maybe not full feature films in Quill. We'll see. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's the perfect production tool in many ways.
Well, the way I definitely see it unfolding is it replacing small teams, or becoming the tool for shorter videos or anything entertainment related and advertising, where you actually will stop needing the whole production behind, when you can just use one or two people instead. Create amazing quality.
It's definitely perfect for independent teams and little studios to tell stories and try out their sort of content, and even maybe for like a web series, for small bits and pieces of content you want to create. But also, again, as in bigger productions, as a tool, if you have a small group of people that use VR and are just able to do super fast iterations together with the director who's sitting next to you, basically in VR, that I think there's a big potential there to save money and time for productions, and that is how new tools will come up, maybe working with VR, and that's how the industry grows, and that's maybe how VR becomes mainstream.
Wow. This is so super inspiring. Cool. So Dan, I think we're just about to run out of time, and I'm going to jump into our traditional questionnaire that we'll do in the end. So I'll remind you the rules. There are 10 questions. You've got 1-2 words, tops 1 sentence to answer each question, and I'll run you through the 10 questions. And that's just about it. Shall we get started?
All right, I'll try to answer it in a couple of
Let's go. Let's go. Okay. So the first question is, what's your favorite place in the world?
Oof. Oh my God. My bed.
Uh-oh. That's not going to get easier. I warned you.
It's my bed. After work.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. While you're working, what are you listening to?
I have a couple of playlists on Spotify, just very different stuff. Electronic music. Yeah.
Okay.
Film music. Yeah.
What's your best way to gain inspiration?
Watching films, and I mean, while working, the music I hear is pretty inspirational, and I'm like, listening to my music on the train, for example. That's a very inspiring place for me to come up with new ideas somehow.
Love that. What's your big life goal?
Okay, here we go. Well, again, playing my part in making VR a better place for people to come together, I guess.
Very nice way of putting it, though, huh? Dan, what's your favorite drink?
Coke Light.
Okay.
And water.
And water, fine. What's the first thing that you do in the morning after you wake up?
Going back to sleep. Having my cereal and watching a YouTube video and then jumping into work, I guess.
Okay, good one. And if you didn't become a digital artist, what would you be?
I think a teacher. I like working with children. I have 2 little siblings, and I think being a teacher would be a good thing, which I am now, kind of, with
Well,
workshops.
that is sort of backup career, so
Yeah,
that's fine. That answers it perfectly.
I guess, yeah.
And what's your recent favorite movie that you could recommend?
Last year I really liked Joker, which
Okay.
was really interesting, and also Parasite, the Korean movie, which
Oh, I just
making its
watched it
rounds.
recently, loved it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Pretty rad.
And
Yeah.
in terms of animation, I loved that Klaus, the 2D animation, was so well recognized, and together with I Lost My Body, the other 2D animation film, which is super crazy and awesome, that they are recognized by the Academy, which is also a cool thing to see. So yeah, those were my
Cool. Those are added on my list just now.
Yeah. Right.
So who are some of your legends, people that you admire in the industry or outside of the industry?
One of my all-time heroes is Albert Einstein, because
Okay.
I when I was 8 or 9, I knew stuff about like the theory of relativity and stuff like that. Just those big questions that you think about, or I was thinking about back then, and I always come back to that. I think when now working with new technologies and those bigger questions that I want to answer, kind of, and that's also something that Elon Musk is very passionate about, just asking bigger questions or asking the right questions, because answering them is sometimes the easier part.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And finally, what are some of the things on your bucket list?
I don't really have those big things to check off, like life goals, I guess.
Okay.
But this year, at least, I want to travel to America. I haven't been outside of Europe once, so I would love to travel more. I really have to, and this year is going to be the year where I do a little trip to the US, visit some guys from my studio, and also in Silicon Valley, having a little trip there.
That's going to be a big discovery.
Yes.
I'm almost jealous
Yes.
for you to go in there for the first time.
Well, we'll see what will happen. It's pretty interesting, yeah.
That's going to be amazing. And then we're done with the questions. So that's it. Yeah. Breathe in, breathe out. Totally. Can you imagine having this meeting in VR? Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would have next
That would be
year.
pretty
Next year
rad.
we will have that meeting in VR, and
Next time, I'm definitely the first one to adopt VR technology for podcasting once it's available.
there we go. Perfect.
There we go. Now we're talking.
If you don't do it, I will do it.
Oh no! Well, you have to ping me when there is the beta version, so that you're not alone doing this, so that we can talk about how is it hosting virtual.
I will invite you to my podcast, and then
That sounds good. That sounds good. All right.
But thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and for your time and all the insights. I really, really loved this talk. I think there was so much into it that I couldn't even envision before. So totally blew my mind. Like boom.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. Cheers. Thank you guys for being here with us. And if you enjoyed the episode, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to get new updates. Also, give us a shout out on Apple Podcasts. We really value your reviews. Thank you again, and see you next week. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Art Heroes Podcast. Check out www.artheroes.co for show notes, more interviews, and free tools made for you by our team of mentors. Tune in next week for more inspiration, and keep up the great work, hero!